All right, so let's go ahead and finish this one up and practice a few more because this kind of question, number 5, this is one that will be on your test, so you want to make sure that you really understand it well. So far we have found two expressions that represent this distance of 11. So let's test out this next one. We're looking at the absolute value of -4 plus 7. Well, if I use my integer rules, I have different signs. I have a -4 and a +7. So I'm going to find the difference between these. So I'm really going to subtract. 7 minus 4 is 3, and my bigger number is positive, so my answer is positive. So I'm really finding the absolute value of 3, which is 3. So this one would not be equivalent to the distance of -4 and 7. Let's look at this third option, the absolute value of -7 plus 4. Well, again, I have different signs. I have a -7 and a +4. So when I have different signs, I'm not going to add, I'm actually going to subtract. 7 minus 4, again, is 3. And my larger number is 7 and it's negative, so my answer is negative. But it doesn't matter because the absolute value of -3 is +3, which again is not equivalent to 11. Let's check out our last two options here. The absolute value of 7 minus 4. 7 minus 4 is 3, and the absolute value of 3 is 3, so this is also not equivalent. And my last one, the absolute value of 4 minus 7. So I'm subtracting more than I started with, so I need to do same, change, change. So this is the absolute value of 4 plus -7. Or you can think of it as adding the opposite. So I'm doing 4 plus the opposite of 7, which is -7. So now I'm adding two numbers with different signs, so I'm going to find the difference. I'm actually going to subtract. 7 minus 4 is 3. My larger number is negative, so my answer is negative, and the absolute value of -3 is 3. So another expression that is not equivalent to 11. So we only found two that actually did represent the distance between -4 and 7. All right, I think you're getting the hang of it, but let's try a few more. Let's pull this up here. Okay, which of the following pairs of numbers are 11 and 1/10 units apart on the number line? So basically, when I subtract these two numbers, is the absolute value of the difference between them 11.1? So let's try out this first one. Looking at the absolute value of -27 and 3/10 minus -16 and 2/10. Well, using my integer rules, since I'm subtracting with negatives, I'm going to do same, change, change. So I'm going to keep -27 and 3/10 the same, but I'm going to change the minus to a plus and the negative to a positive. So now I am adding two numbers with different signs. So I'm actually going to find the difference. So I will do 27 and 3/10 minus 16 and 2/10. So the difference between 3/10 and 2/10 is 1/10, and the difference between 27 and 16 is 11. My larger number is negative, so my answer is negative, but I'm taking the absolute value of this whole thing, and the absolute value of -11 and 1/10 is +11 and 1/10. So this pair of numbers would be 11 and 1/10 units apart on the number line. Let's check out this next one. If I want to know the distance between these two numbers, then I'm going to take the absolute value of their difference. So as I'm subtracting them, I will do -4 4/10 minus -6 7/10. And I put it inside the absolute value bars. So I'm going to subtract, since I'm subtracting with negatives, I'm going to do same, change, change. So I keep -4 4/10 the same, and then I change the minus to a plus, and then negative to a positive. So now I have a negative and a positive that I'm adding. So my rule says different signs, find the difference. So I'm actually going to subtract these, and then my larger number takes the sign. So the difference between 4 4/10 and 6 7/10 is 2 3/10. My larger number is positive, so my answer is positive, and the absolute value of 2 3/10 is 2 3/10. So this would not be an example of a pair of numbers that are 11 1/10 units apart. Let's look at -4 4/10 and 6 7/10. Okay, if I want to find the distance between these numbers, then I'm going to take the absolute value of their difference. So -4 4/10 minus 6 7/10. Since I'm subtracting with negatives, I'm going to do same, change, change. So -4 4/10 stays the same. I change the minus to a plus, and 6 7/10 I change to -6 7/10. Now I'm adding two numbers with the same sign, so I add them like normal and I keep the sign. So this will be the absolute value of 11 1/10, and the absolute value of 11 1/10 of -11 1/10 is positive 11 1/10. So this would show another pair of numbers that works in this situation. Let's look at 4 4/10 and 6 7/10. As I picture these two numbers on the number line, I know that they're both positive, and 4 and 6 are only 2 units apart. So these are going to be pretty close to each other. So I'm going to say that these definitely are not a pair of numbers. But if I want to prove it, I could show you that the absolute value of the difference between these two numbers does not come out to 11 1/10. So I'm subtracting, and I'm taking away more than what I started with. So I'm going to do same, change, change. So now I'm adding numbers with different signs, so I'm really going to find the difference. So the difference, or when I subtract 6 7/10 and 4 4/10, is I get 2 3/10. My larger number is negative, so my answer is negative. And the absolute value of -2 3/10 is positive 2 3/10. So we did prove these are not 11 1/10 apart from each other. Let's look at -27 3/10 and 16 2/10. And right off the bat, I'm thinking, okay, -27.3, this is 27.3 units from 0, and 16.2 is another 16.2 units from 0, so this is going to have a much greater distance than 11.1. But if we want to prove it, I can take those two numbers and find the difference between them. So I'm taking the absolute value of -27.3 minus 16.2. Since I'm subtracting with negatives, I'm going to go ahead and do same, change, change. So -27 3/10 stays the same. I change the minus to a plus, and I change positive 16.2 to negative 16.2. So now I'm adding two numbers with the same sign, so I can add like normal and keep that negative sign. So 27 3/10 plus 16 2/10 would be negative 43 and 5/10. I'm going to take the absolute value of that negative distance, which is positive 43 and 5/10. And finally, let's check out 27 and 3/10 and negative 16 and 2/10. So I'm going to take the absolute value of the difference between these. So I'm going to subtract 27 and 3/10 minus negative 16 and 2/10. Since I'm subtracting with negatives, I will do same, change, change. So 27.3 stays the same. Minus becomes a plus, negative becomes a positive. So now I'm adding these. And I know from adding these that I'm going to end up with the absolute value of 43.5, which the absolute value of 43.5 is 43.5. So the only pairs of numbers that are 11 and 1/10 units apart are negative 27 and 3/10 and negative 16 2/10. So this one, and negative 4 and 4/10 and positive 6.7. The rest do not work. We're going to wrap up with number 8 here, and then I'll let you work on your homework. Suppose city A is 45 and 9/10 kilometers east of city B. City C is 114 and 7/10 kilometers east of city B. How far apart are city A and city C? Definitely in this case, I think a picture or kind of a number line type diagram is going to help. So city A is east of city B. If we're thinking of directions in terms of right and left, then let's give ourselves a big old number line here. And this can be city A. Okay, city A is 45.9 kilometers east of city B. So city A is actually to the right of city B. Okay, and the distance between these two is 45 and 9/10 kilometers. City C is 114 and 7/10 kilometers east of city B. So city C is further east than A is. So let's put C over here somewhere, and this is not drawn to scale. So from B to C, this is a distance of 114 and 7/10 kilometers. So we want to know how far apart are A and C. So I'm looking to try to find this distance here. So let's think about what we know. We know the overall distance, and so this is like our whole, and this is one of our parts that we know, and we're trying to find this other missing part. So if I take the absolute value of the difference between these two, my whole minus my part, then I can find my other missing part. So let's do the absolute value of 114 and 7/10 minus 45 and 9/10. So as we work that out quickly and find that difference, we see that we're looking at the absolute value of 68 and 8/10. So city A and city C are 68 and 8/10 kilometers apart. All right, you guys are all set for your digits 4.6. Should be ready in there for you. Good luck. I will see you tomorrow.